Greetings, brothers and sisters. Jared J. Kushner has released a book. I don't know if this was from Fox News, but this is his office. There's his book. He said something astounding, which one of my viewers sent to me.
And then finally, I think that from the last year, the one thing I've tried to put a priority on since I left the White House was getting some exercise in. I think that there's a good probability that my generation is, hopefully with the advances in science, either the first generation to live forever or the last generation that's going to die. And so we need to keep ourselves in pretty good shape.
What world do you live in, bro? As many of you know, I have another channel, which Apocalypse Now, which I feature a daily edition of Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies, where I document not only famous people, but now regular folks who are dropping like flies, which most of us kind of are aware of. And it doesn't necessarily mean dying. It means poor health, poor mental health, glitch out or whatever it is. And I cover, things on this channel that are similar to that. Over an hour worth of content about how our civilization's collapsing and the human beings collapsing. And this MNFer thinks he's going to live forever, right? That's with medical and scientific breakthrough, he's going to be immortal. Jared Kushner thinks he's immortal, right? And, I want to talk about this guy extensively at the end of the video. I've made videos about him before. And his Park Avenue 666, he bought a, just whatever it was. Like I'll get into that later. But this is what you get when you get Trump, this guy. Corporate landlords are gobbling up mobile home parks and rapidly driving up rents. Here's why the space is so attractive to them. The hunt for yield has pushed equity firms and professional investors into new segments of the real estate market. In recent years, sophisticated investors have snapped up multifamily units and single-family homes. Now corporate landlords are targeting the most cost-effective segment of the real estate market, mobile homes. Mitt Romney says a billionaire tax will trigger demand for these two physical assets to get in now before the super rich swarm. Manufactured homes or mobile homes are considered the most affordable non-subsidized housing option in America. That's because the owners own only a prefabricated unit and not the land under the home. The land is usually leased from the landlord or trailer park. And so now the super rich are getting into the mobile home market and they're cranking up the rates because that's what they do. Trump seized passports could be a problem for him, legal experts say. In a court filing Tuesday night, federal prosecutors said the passports were in a desk drawer that also held classified documents and are relevant evidence. Come on. His passport is relevant evidence, so they seized his passports. Donald Trump has complained that the FBI agent's seizure of his passports showed the investigators ran amok as they searched through his Florida home. But new information about how and where the passports were found could spell major trouble for the former president, legal experts told NBC. In a footnote in Tuesday's court filing, pushing back against Trump's demand for a special master to sort through the evidence that was seized as Mar-a-Lago property, Justice Department officials countered his contention that it was an overreach to make 3 passports that were later returned. Oh, they returned them. So this is like, why am I reading this? Obstruction now a major focus in the Trump document probe. An FBI investigation into the presence of top-secret information at Mar-a-Lago is zeroing in on the question of whether former President Trump's team obstructed the probe. I've talked about this. When they send him to jail, I'll believe all this. When I see Trump being, sent to prison or whatever it is, otherwise this is just them trying to keep the focus on him and off of everything else, right? This is about making Trump the center of the news cycle. pretty much every time I turn on CNN or MSNBC, there's a Trump story. Or I go to MSNBC or Huffington Post, and there's a Trump story on a daily basis. Then late night comedians talk about Trump 5 or 6 more times. For every 5 times they talk about Trump, one time about Joe Biden. And when they do, it's favorable to Magoo. Like, very seldom do they do a disparaging comedy bit about the senile president and his crackhead son. And so, there's a huge disparity here. And I don't know. They're obviously targeting Trump. I mean, again, like, it's all a show. But you can say whatever you want, and the Democrats can say whatever they want, but they've targeted Trump for whatever reason, whether Trump's in on it, whatever it's part of the show, whatever it is. They're giving him a different level of, scrutiny, but it never ends up in jail. Like, they have all this stuff on him. He doesn't need to be guilty, and I'm sure he's done things because he's Trump. He was always somebody who, all these guys always push the limits. Like, Martha Stewart went to jail for insider trading, and everybody does that. Like, why did she go to jail? There's just crimes among the rich. The rich people are always bending the law, and they can be scrutinized. Their taxes can be scrutinized. There's any number of ways they can be sent to jail or be, ostracized or targeted in some way or another. And they've targeted Trump, and yet it never ends up in jail. There's stuff in New York State. There's other people going to jail in the Trump organization, but why not Trump, right? And so, they need him. They need these stories. And it's just an ever-going, an ongoing, ever-going, set of crises and scandals for Trump. But none of them ever get rid of the guy, right? His followers are going to follow him no matter what. And unless they put him in jail, he's running for president again. And, it seems like they want that. I can't imagine, because they don't have a second act. They're all about Trump. As soon as Trump disappears, their networks disappear, and the Democratic Party disappears in the sense that they don't have a platform. And the networks don't have a story. They don't have, they're missing it's like taking the villain out of a movie in the middle of the movie, right? And so, they just need Trump. So one of my friends on Instagram just sent me this. I'm going to get it in right before the wire, before we're getting this video done. I got some big Obi-Wan Kenobi reveals to get into as well. And then coming back to Jared Kushner. But here they are. John Berman, Breonna Keeler, and Don Lemons. Alex, I'll take 3 people who won't be with CNN in 6 months. Remember, they were listed as the next people to get Brian Stelson.
I want to hear what you think about an exchange that Meghan Markle had. Of course, she's got this podcast. It's so popular right now. Mm-hmm. Part of it, of course, is because it's Meghan Markle, but she's also got these huge high-profile guests, Serena.
It's taken off. It's crazy. She's getting, look at Breonna. She's getting, 20 to 30 times more the viewership that CNN's getting right now.
Or Williams. In this case, it's Mariah Carey who she was speaking with yesterday when she said this.
Yep.
I think for us, it's so different because we're light-skinned. You're not treated as a black woman. You're not treated as a white woman. You sort of fit in between. I mean, if there's any time in my life that it's been more focused on my race, it's only once I started dating my husband. Then I started to understand what it was like to be treated like a black woman, because up until then I had been treated like a mixed woman. And things really shifted.
What does that even mean? I mean, people look at you and try to assess your race, or they don't. Like, some people do more than others, right? Some people look at you and try to assess your ethnic background. Like, I don't know what I look like, but I think most people, when they hear the name Romano and they look at me, they assume I'm Italian. But I'm a quarter Sicilian. I'm a quarter Albanian, and I barely know what that even means. I'm a quarter Irish and a quarter German. And so nobody would guess that by looking at me, right? And it is whatever it is. Like, whatever. I've had people say derogatory Italian things to me, and I'm like, dude, I know very little about being Italian other than, what you guys all know from watching the Goodfellas or whatever on TV. And so, it doesn't hurt my feelings. Like if you say anything derogatory about my 4 ethnicities, I don't take it all personally. But whatever, people look at somebody, and I think if you look at Meghan Markle's, you might think, oh, she's, Hispanic, or she might be part Asian, or whatever it might be, right? She's got dark hair, but I don't think you would think she's African American. Same thing with Mariah Carey, and biracial possibly, but I don't even know how that would affect the way people treat her, right? Like she's somebody who's aloof. I knew that Mariah Carey came into a restaurant, or she was going to come into a restaurant in which I was the waiter, so I would have waited on Mariah Carey, but she chose to stay back at the hotel, and all of her people with her came. She is on tour, so all the musicians and dancers and stage people is like a table of like 25 or 30 people. And I didn't know who she was at the time. It was like her first tour. And so, she was like a rising star. And I didn't hear it, but some of my coworkers heard them like talking about what stuck up she was. And she was young. She was in her when her career was first taking off. But anyways, let's get into Don Lemon's got something to say. Let's hear what he's got to say.
You've talked a lot about this, Don, this concept.
Yeah, well, look, there are a couple of things at work here. There's colorism, which I talk about. There's colorism in the black community. But there's also, this is also for people, in some ways she's saying that she had privilege. And so therefore it didn't apply to her.
Wow, she had privilege. She said it right there. Meghan Markle had privilege, and now she's part of the royal family. And she also has privilege. Not like when she was part of the royal family, but still privilege.
Because it never happened to her, right? She was a mixed woman. People didn't really know how to react to her. They didn't know if she was black or white, but she didn't get the full black treatment because people weren't sure that she was, black. I think most African Americans probably looked at her and said, oh, I know that's a black woman. But I think the larger culture may not have realized that. But what she is coming from is a place of privilege.
Privilege, there it goes, privilege.
She did not have to deal with racism until she married a white man, and she's got all this criticism and all this attention, and suddenly she understood
No, she married a prince, a ginger prince.
understands what it's like to be part of a group of people, especially women in this country or in Europe, who are discriminated against. So I think it was eye-opening for her. It's certainly real.
Definitely, it's so real. There's nothing real about Meghan Markle's, right? Like she's just so pretentious and self-conscious, and it's hard to listen to her just the way that she talks and presents herself. Like she's somebody who's posing. She's created a character and she's posing and she's bad at it. Like all these Hollywood celebrities and news people are all trying to create a character, which they're not like in real life, right?
And, it's interesting. Mariah Carey has a very similar experience. I remember when Mariah Carey came about in the 90s, people didn't know what to do with her. In that podcast, she talks about even people not knowing how to do her hair, and her, the people who were in charge of her and trying to establish her as an artist didn't really.
Why are these 3 guys going to get canceled? I mean, it's amazing. This is amazing content they have here.
Know how to market her. Do they market her as a black woman? Do they market her as a mixed woman? Do they market her?
When do they ever do that? When did they ever market somebody based in their racial identity, right? I mean, you might target a different group. You might go after different groups of people. But in terms of being a singer, you would want to get as many different demographics as possible. You would want to have them, like when a country singer goes pop and they're able to get outside just having a country audience, right? You want to have as much a universal audience as possible, like they've done with Beyonce and Madonna and all these other people. They want as many different types of people buying their records and listening to them. Everyone wants to maximize their customer base.
As a white woman, they didn't really know how to do it. So I think it's I think it's an eye-opening podcast.
No, it's not. It's horrible.
I commend Meghan Markle for going there, even though it is a bit shocking that at 30-some years of age, she is just understanding what it's like to be a black woman in America. It's a bit surprising to me.
Bit surprising, but she's commended for having a privilege and going on and doing a superficial podcast where, based in no other reason but that she married a prince, she is now listened to by people, more so than Joe Rogan, who had the #1 podcast on Spotify until Meghan Markle's had put this thing together, right? So I'm in the editing process. I just want to add this. Like this very concept that Meghan Markle said she didn't know what it was like to be treated as a black woman in America until she married this prince or, anywhere else. And Don Lemon's focusing on this. There are a lot more things that make up how you're treated. There is how you dress. There's whether you're considered good looking or not. There's whether you're obese or not, right? There's whether your accent matches where you are now. Like if you have a southern accent and you're in New York City, how people respond to you. What do they think about you, right? They think you're a hick. They think you're ignorant, right? There's this, idea that all white people have privilege. There's plenty of poor white people who live in trailer parks, people who are like recent immigrants or whatever it might be, right? People who, for whatever reason, they are in the lower socioeconomic demographic of America. And that's a lot of white people. There are a lot of poor white people out there. A lot of poor, ignorant white people. Like people who are, would end up on that show Cops, right? Meth heads and drug addicts. And, just based on your appearance or where you're from or, how you present yourself, whether you're educated or, whether you're ignorant or educated. There's people who are in the academia world. This is Kamala Harris's parents were both college professors. And you see movies and TV shows that are aimed at academic people, right? People who are, they're just, they're intellectual elitists. And their material, the books they read and, everything that they do in terms of their thinking themselves intellectually superior. And there's difference between like math people and literary people, English people, right? People who are focused on, literary type of things, maybe even people who are educated and they're psychiatrists or doctors. There's all these various ways of being academically elite, and they're all groups that don't, look favorable on the other groups, like math people, tech people, science people will mock some poet or some, some literary professor for not being able to work a computer properly or whatever it might be, right? And so there's all these various layers of prejudice and the way people judge other people. And I think that there's like white privilege for all white people. There's a group of people who live either in, upper class areas, suburbs, who have, a better lifestyle, less fear of crime, whatever it might be. And then there's higher levels of people than that live in the elite neighborhoods, people who are millionaires, multimillionaires. Then there's politicians and famous people. And you just keep on going up the pyramid. And it's a pyramid of privilege. And everybody wants their privilege and thinks they deserve their privilege, right? Whatever privileges we have opposed to other people in this country or globally. But nobody gives up their privilege. No one says, hey, my privilege is, I don't deserve it, right? A few people might, here or there. But, it's a society that's based in privilege. You work hard. You have some abilities. You might be born into money, too. Sure. You might be born, there's nothing more racist or privileged than the royal family, the British royal family, but there's levels of privileges in our society because it's based in privilege. It's based in competition. Everybody kept equal. You're talking about communism. And most people who complain about privilege would hate communism, right? Would hate those types of where everybody is, got the same. Where they, and even those countries, they don't have that, but you would hate it there, right? All this complaint about privilege. Yeah, there are some, racially built-in privileges. It's not like that's not true at all. But there's all these other levels of privilege. If you're smart, you're going to have privileges. You know, if you have a skill, you have a talent, you become a celebrity, you're going to have privileges. There's all these ways that you can earn privileges, and you can work for them, right? I'm not saying I like it or dislike it. I don't know. But that's our system, right? And everybody works for privileges. That's why you're complaining about it. But if you're on TV and you're like, these three clowns who are on CNN or, even a bigger celebrity, you have privilege. If you're a famous person with money, you have privilege. I mean, it doesn't matter what your demographics are. Maybe, your privileges are limited, but you still have more than the average person. Okay, so I want to get into some of the more creepy, pedo, incestuous type of relationships in the Star Wars universe, and then talk about how horrible I finished this series, and it was horrible. Like, I watched it because it was so bad, and there's just something funny to me about how Star Wars has imploded on itself, and it makes everything else suck retroactively. So before I get to the big, some of the huge plot holes and some of the more creepy stuff in Star Wars, that you see a trend in a variety of movies. I saw a few movies that also had this similar trend. And I was going to make videos about them, and maybe I'll do that later on, but I just might mention those movies here. So there's a character called the Third Sister who is very aggressively after Obi-Wan Kenobi, but in reality she was a little girl when Anakin Skywalker slaughtered all these kids, these children who were going to be Jedi. And they make a point to talk about how Anakin says it and this girl says it, that they were taken away as kids from their families and they never see their families again. Which, if you think about how messed that is, that the Jedi are the heroes, and yet they've been snatched from their parents, oftentimes orphans. Orphan is a big theme. I've covered this in movies. In kids' movies, Harry Potter is an orphan. And I mean, just go down the list of all the kids that are orphans. Peter Pan, being an orphan in kids' movies and, some of these sort of, these blockbuster movies. Frodo Baggins is an orphan. Like all these epic sort of movie and TV franchises. How many of the Disney movies, the kid loses one or both parents? Like Finding Nemo, the guy loses his mom right off the bat. And so there's all these movies that there's a child orphan that becomes a hero. And that's really featured in all three of the Star Wars movies. All three of the heroes, Luke Skywalker, Anakin Skywalker, and that girl Rey, is that her name, Rey? All three of them are orphans. And so that's a big part of this thing. And all of these Jedi are yanked out of their families. Think about if there was an American military was testing kids for their ability to be super warriors and were plucking them out of families when they were 5-6 years old, right? Or younger, and started to train them to be super soldiers. Like, how would people feel about that? And that's the premise behind the heroes in the Star Wars movie, the Star Wars franchise. But this woman, this third sister, is, she was there when Anakin Skywalker slaughtered all of her classmates, all of her, the other pupils who were going to be Jedi, and she played dead. Like, she pretended she covered herself with, other bodies, hidden the bodies so he didn't kill her. And then she planned to kill him when he's Darth Vader. And she comes up behind Darth Vader while he's trying to get Obi-Wan Kenobi, but he can't. And while he's distracted with that, she tries to kill him, but he senses it because they have selective intuition, which I'll talk about later. And then they have this battle, and this is what happens afterwards.
You are of no further use.
So this is a guy who's slaughtered millions of people. And the reason she's out to get him is he killed a bunch of kids when he wasn't even Darth Vader yet. He was becoming Vader, right? In the 6th and 3rd episode, the sixth movie and third episode, he had killed a bunch of people, a bunch of the sand people that lived on his home planet. He was just slaughtering people left and right? And that was before he was Darth Vader. And then as Darth Vader, he's just a cold-blooded killer. He walked through a village killing kids, using his powers to just kill people and families. And now he has this person who's tried to murder him, plotted against him, tried to stab him in the back. So you think he might kill her.
Your rage was useful. Now it is tiresome. We will leave you where we found you, in the gutter where you belong.
Or you should kill her, right? I had to lighten this up. There's another one of those, where it's shot so dark you can barely see what's going on. But these scenes and these movies and TV shows with dingy light or whatever. But, why wouldn't you kill her? She has more scenes to go. She has to then go try to kill Luke Skywalker when she finds out that he's Darth Vader's kid, but she can't do it at the end. And she gets this pep talk from Obi-Wan Kenobi. But, and maybe they're going to make a sequel. I don't know to this. But there was a number of times where somebody should have been killed, would have been killed, if the characters were following along with what they were supposed to do, right? So there's another scene, a couple other scenes. I already covered the one before with Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi, but then they had another fight.
Anakin's gone. I am what remains.
Okay, so we know that neither of these two characters are going to die because they're going to be in 3 more movies, right? The first 3 Star Trek movies, right? And so they can't die. Either can Luke or Leia or whatever. And so all this suspenseful music, we know, unless they're trying to do some sort of alternate reality, which they're not, that they can't die, right? But Obi-Wan Kenobi now has Darth Vader at his mercy. Darth Vader just tried to kill him a second time and almost did. And he's killed so many people, including kids and families and women, and he's a ruthless murderer. And Anakin now has the opportunity to kill him, but of course we know he isn't because, we've seen the other movies.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Anakin, for all of it.
I am not your failure, Obi-Wan. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
Okay, so we now know that Anakin Skywalker's gone. Darth Vader only exists, and he's a cold-blooded murderer and causing all kinds of havoc and your enemy. He's trying to kill you and your loved ones. So, why don't you kill him?
The same way I will destroy you.
Then my friend is truly dead. Goodbye, Darth.
So now you have an entity who's killed your friend and your pupil and, ruined everything for everybody. And you're walking away because, he has to. There's no other choice. These fights shouldn't have taken place because one of my viewers commented that
I've been waiting for you, Obi-Wan. We meet again at last. The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
So there are some glaring holes here, right? Because Luke and Leia are 10 years old in this TV show. And Luke is 19 in this movie, A New Hope. It's only 9 years have passed. And Obi-Wan Kenobi is 40 in the, he looks around 40 years old. 50 at most. And Sir Isaac, whatever the guy in this movie is, who plays Obi-Wan, is obviously in his 70s or 80s. So there's that. And Darth Vader and him have already met twice now. So they're just throwing out all the other stuff at these movies. But then there was a fight scene before this thing happened at the end with Obi-Wan Kenobi showing mercy on Darth Vader for some reason. Darth Vader had a chance to kill him just a few minutes before. Okay, so Darth Vader opened up a huge crater, a cavern, right? A canyon with his force, splitting the earth in half. And then he drops a mountain on Obi-Wan Kenobi, tears it down with his force. And I talked about how yesterday I covered how he was throwing Obi-Wan Kenobi around like he was a rag doll with the force, and then there was a fire between them, and he chose not to pick him up, even though Obi-Wan was unconscious and he'd been pursuing him. It was his number one thing is to find him and kill him, right? But he let him go there, and then he's going to do this here.
Did you truly think that you could defeat me? You have failed, Master.
So you're talking to him after he's dead? Is it? So who are you talking to? Because you don't know if he's in there or not. Because he does have the Force also. And we know that like it's impossible to kill these guys, right? You don't know for sure he's dead. He might be holding up the rocks with the Force, which he is, of course, because we know he's going to survive this. You've already let him go once, and he wanted to torture him some more. You didn't kill him when he had the opportunity because he wanted him to suffer. He wanted him to put him through the same pain that he had been through, even though he himself admits later on in this fight scene that he was the one that killed Anakin. So, I mean, there's all these, idiosyncratic issues and plot holes. But he walks away when he could just order a drone strike or something, to make sure, right? He's got him trapped under the rock. He could do something. They got all kinds of powerful weapons. He's got a big old spaceship up there that could send something down, lock it in the coordinates, and he could destroy the whole planet. I mean, just to make sure. Because the guy has gotten away. I mean, just like I said yesterday, with they constantly getting bugged, right? And they never learn their lessons. Like they never go, well, let's not let that happen again. And so everything that his character's about is killing Obi-Wan Kenobi. And he's going to let him go again. And then this happens, which leads us into a more disturbing sort of creepy, pedo, kind of incestuous aspect to this universe.
You cannot run, Obi-Wan.
Okay, so he's stuck under the pile of rocks, and this is where he's regaining his powers. And he's just remembering all these wonderful times he's had with Princess Leia and the few times he's sort of, been stalking Luke in that Tatooine planet or whatever. And it gives him the strength, thinking of these two little kids, to throw off the rocks and climb out. Which leads us to some creepy subtexts and narratives that have been a part of this universe for a while. And now they're like basically exposed by this stupid TV series.
Will I ever see you again?
Maybe. Someday. If you ever need help from a tired old man. But we must be careful. No one must know, or it could endanger us both.
That's something a Peter would say, right? And there's some creepiness to their relationship.
Goodbye, Obi-Wan.
It just is really uncomfortable here.
Goodbye, Princess. May the Force be with you.
And it's just creepy, this long stares and then this weird goodbye that they have, right? But part of their relationship, I'll come back to this because I'll show you some more aspects of this relationship because it's a lot like Luke and Leia's relationship and Leia's and Han Solo's relationship, where she's stubborn at times and talking smack at other times, and they have an adversarial relationship, and she runs away a couple times and she yells at him. They have some contentious relationship that ends up with this very weird, sweet kind of goodbye kind of a thing. But let's go back to the original Star Wars, because this, the stuff that's going on here, especially at the end of this TV show, really makes you question the decisions made by the adults, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, and how they handled Luke and Leia's relationship. So that kiss was an incestuous kiss from Leia with her brother Luke. And later would creep all of us out, right? Because it was something we remembered. I remember as a kid seeing them do this, and there was this hint at a romance, right? Which I'll get into in a moment, which should have been avoided, right? Because when you watch this TV show, you get this sense that in more detailed fashion, that they were being watched over as brother and sister, and at some point they were going to interact, and you don't want this to happen, right? And then there was this deleted scene.
I'll be gone in a day or so. Does it hurt?
Nah, I'm fine. Leia, when I was out in that storm,
I was real worried.
you were worried. It got me thinking, I might never get the chance.
What? Tell me.
So I didn't even know about this scene before today. They got droid blocked. The brother and sister got droid blocked. But this scene was out there, and then there was this other kiss that happened in the, Empire Strikes Back. So all those things happened, and there was sort of this, well, should go with Han or should go with Luke, right? That was kind of, Team Luke, Team Han kind of a deal, right? And then we find out this, right?
He's my father. If I don't make it back, you're the only hope for the Alliance.
Luke, don't talk that way. You have a power I don't understand and could never have.
So there's another piece to this before we get into the brother-sister thing. And now because of Me Too and just this movement, this feminist movement, we see a push for, like in the third trilogy, Rey is a female, the lead orphan is a female, right? And there were plenty of female Jedi in the second trilogy. But in the first one, it was back when, men were the heroes and women were the damsels in distress. And Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher did some fighting, but mostly it was left to the men to do the, there wasn't women involved who were like fighter pilots and these things. And then in the second series, they brought women in to be more a part of the action, right? But now there's this plot hole because there were two children of Anakin Skywalker, and they both had this power in them. So why wouldn't Obi-Wan Kenobi train both of them and Yoda train both of them? There's no Jedi left. Like, he's the last of the Jedi, right? But he didn't need to be because she had the same power. And so, we're going to get into why they didn't come out and tell them that they were, brother and sister, which is a big problem. But the, problem here is this whole Me Too thing. Like, they should have said something. Like, now this, years later, when there's been this whole change in the culture, so they had to reverse these plots where women are now rescuing men and beating them up, to where, back when this first started making this, there was no thought of Leia being, having any powers. So they dropped this in the final movie of the first trilogy.
You're wrong, Leia. You have that power too. In time, you'll learn to use it as I have. Force is strong in my family. My father has it. I have it. My sister has it. Yes. It's you, Leia.
So they, dragged this out. And when this came out, I remember being creeped out. Like, I don't know when I was a teenager now, or maybe I was in high school when this came out. It took a while for these movies, the sequels, to come out. So I was 19 when this came out. So I was like 10 when it was, 8 or whatever when it was first released. And 19 when the final movie came out. And I was like, what? My friends, anybody who saw it, we were like, that was effed up. They were making out as brother and sister. And they, they pitted this thing as that was one of the things that had to be resolved. Who would she choose? But now when I watch this TV show, it's very obvious that it was a failure, like, in terms of the character structure. That you had these Jedi masters that were supposed to, it's funny how they have intuition at some points, where they come up with incredible insight with their intuition. And other times they go into traps, or, it's like their powers are selective based on what the script needs. Their intuition's selective. I mean, it's so poorly made. Again, I could forgive some of these things if they were a good movie, but the acting and the directing and all these things suck. And we know how bad the final one is. Remember when Leia was caught up in space, frozen in space, and she somehow flies across there? In the house, they tried to make her into something in the last series. I didn't see the final movie, but I know how bad it was. And so the idea was there, then why the hell wouldn't Obi-Wan Kenobi tell Luke, hey, that's your sister? Because when Luke saw her, and I'm not going to show you that scene, but he originally sees her as a hologram projection, which was this breakthrough in movie technology, right, when I was a kid. And he's fantasizing about this princess, this damsel in distress, which is a whole archetype, right, for movies. And, he's this, horny 19-year-old kid stuck on a farm without any women folk within hundreds of miles, right? And, he's all of a sudden thrust into this drama where he's got to rescue this princess. And you think Obi-Wan Kenobi could see the energy, right? Like with his powerful insight and, just knowing about human nature. I mean, this guy who's, the height of his sexuality, even Mark Hamill, right? And then he would look at this and go, hey, this might be a problem later on, right? So he would say to him, hey, that's your sister. Stay away from her. That's your effing sister. And then Yoda's training him, and Yoda has the opportunity to tell him, right? And so instead of having to have these uncomfortable memories of making out and, lusting over this person, which he did for years, and this, all of it. I mean, when this came out and it was that this in Return of the Jedi that they were brother and sister, and it was like, what the fuck, what are you doing? And George Lucas, it seemed like he just threw that in there for some stupid reason, right? But he said, no, I've known this all along. We're like, then why did you, make this incestuous, freaking creepy relationship? But it's even worse with this girl and Obi-Wan Kenobi, young Leia, because they have this same sort of dynamic. Let me show you a few. So this is the sappy music they play during this clip, where there's like this prolonged hand-holding between the two of them, right, when they're kind of bonding. And, the music they play, in a movie where you can tell who is going to be romantically involved by the kind of music they play, the way they look each other. There's just this level, you're like, oh, those two are going to get together. And this happened here in this creepy scene. So let me show you some of the other weird interactions they had and how annoying this young actress is in this show.
We're on our own. We're gonna need some help.
What are you doing?
Maybe they can give us a ride to the spaceport.
But it's not safe.
He seems friendly.
Leia.
Just a lot of this where she's, parentified, or she's the adult in the relationship, or she acts like the adult, and, it's not like a kid-adult kind of relationship. It's like a couple that's going to get together, like Luke and Leia, or, Han and Leia.
You'll have to trust me eventually.
How can I trust you when I know you're hiding something? You think the less you say, the less you give away. But really, it's the opposite.
How old are you?
10.
You don't sound like you're 10.
She doesn't look like she's 10 either. She looks like she's 7 or 8. She's so small. She's tiny, of course, Carrie Fisher was small. And there's all this weirdness, because Carrie Fisher ends up having this really deep voice, from when she first started making the movies. She was a really depressed person. She got her ashes put in a Prozac bottle. I mean, I covered her death and, all these things. Just a weird, really weird situation with her. But this weird interaction where she's, intuitive, and she's seeing through what his, he's hiding something from her, and she can't trust him, and why wouldn't he, like they're in some kind of adult relationship, and they're not, right? She's a kid that he's rescuing.
What is that? Why is there a picture of you? You did lie.
Leia.
That's what you were hiding. You're the reason I'm here. They took me to get to you.
So she has this unbelievable intuition where she's figured out from this wanted poster that they're out to get him, and that that they took her to get to him, right? But she can't figure out that he's a Jedi and he's important and he's a good guy and he's there to help her, right? Like there's a lot of this sort of back talk and, aggressiveness and stubbornness on her part. And it's just this like little kid who says she's 10. She looks like she's 5, and she's got the, annoying power of like a Saturday Night Live sketch.
Did my father even send you?
Of course he did. Leia, listen.
How do I know you're not the real kidnapper?
You have to trust me, Leia.
You aren't a Jedi.
Your father is a very old friend.
I don't believe you.
Leia. Leia!
So again, she's supposed to have this power of intuition, but then she asks all these questions that are stupid questions that are wrong, stubborn, whatever. She figured out all this complex adult concept. And then she jets on him and starts running through a scary city. She's in a planet where she just has been broken out from being kidnapped by these guys, taken from her home planet. This guy rescues her, and she's going to run by herself through the city with no plan, no money, no adult skills other than this, intuition ability.
No.
Now, she's about 3 feet tall. He's a Jedi. He runs... she's not even... Look at him. He can't catch her. Right? She's going nowhere. This whole thing's ridiculous, and it has this sort of adult romantic undertones where there's trust issues and, whatever else it is, right? Just a weird dynamic. Like, you could see it built. I'm only showing the little bits and pieces of it here. But as I was saying, who is going to be romantically involved, or they have this way of showing you that two people have interest in each other and, have this, heightened level of intimacy and sexual energy, sexual tension. And they have this in this movie, like these two characters. And it's really creepy. And I've seen it, I just was, I had watched a movie, I think when I was in India, called The Confirmation. And there's the guy from the movie, The Children of Men. I forget the actor's name. Don't care. Don't tell me. Don't need to know, right? None of these things are important. But he has an estranged son, or a son that's, he's like, on hard times, and they're like looking for his tools. And I remembered, wow, I've seen this movie before. So I sort of fast forward through it, just trying to remember. Like I had forgotten pretty much everything in the movie, but I could sense I'd seen it before, because I have this, this Star Wars intuition. And he gets evicted. He has to have his kid go through the window. And, he's like grabbing the kid's butt. And he says, "Is this hurt?" or whatever. It's just a weird, weird interaction. There's a few of them that are like that. There's another movie called The Chef, I think it's called, the movie. And it's a boy and his dad who's a chef and a sous chef. And there's several weird interactions, and they play the song Sexual Healing, and the three characters are singing to it, and they focus on the boy. Like, if I showed you the scenes, you'd be like, oh, yeah, that's really creepy. And then there's this movie with Hugh Grant called About a Boy. And all of them have this, like, there's just ways where you can tell that there's hidden meaning. It's not overtly sexual, but you can, get a sense that that's what they're going for, right? And it's clear in this, like, this dynamic between Leia and Obiwan Kenobi, and just all the, ramifications of her relationship. And she's going to grow up and make out with her brother, like all this weird Jedi stuff where they take them away from their families and, train them to be superheroes or whatever. Just, and then just how bad this show is, like how it's just bad filmmaking. And it adds more to the retroactively sucking of the whole universe. Like, the whole universe is now crap. And you go back and you rewatch the movies with, all this, like, suck you now know about. And so let's get back to this Jared Kushner thing. I just want to focus on that briefly here.
A good probability that my generation is, hopefully with the advances in science, either the first generation to live forever or the last generation that's going to die. And
so that, financial debacle, Park Avenue 666 or whatever it is, Fifth Avenue 666, where he bought that building, and, just the creepiness of this dude and how powerful, the positions of power that Trump put him in. Like, if this guy was a Democrat, he would probably be one of the top people that Republicans and people in the truth community would hate, right? He's just, like, really, I mean, the only thing that he's got going for him is that he's Trump's, son-in-law. And so, there's these people who are in the Republican Party that are just unlikable, horrible people, but they get a pass from the truthers and the right-wing people because, they're not Democrats. But Jared Kushner is just off the charts creepy. And he just said something that's really messed up. Like, in his mind, he thinks that immortality is achievable within his generation. He thinks he's going to live forever. And, he thinks that's a good thing, right? And somebody who's that warped, I mean, he's, done some shady stuff and just a bad person. They talked about how he would be at parties, and you can, find it somewhere. I've covered it before. And he would be talking to somebody. He said, "Oh, I want to talk to somebody more important than you. Like, I can't waste my time with you. I need to find somebody more important." And these people were, famous governmental or, like, some of these people were, important in their own right. And he's just really off. His dad is a felon. His dad, was convicted of these crimes that, financial crimes. And Jarod Kushner didn't, believe his dad was guilty. I mean, there's all this stuff to do with his life. Very twisted person, right? And so, yeah, this is like, really freaky what he says here. And this is a guy who, again, for all the Trumpers, he doesn't represent your values. Like, he doesn't represent the right-wing values. He doesn't represent, I mean, even Trump doesn't really represent them. Trump was a sort of, go between liberal and conservative positions, giving money to both parties, hanging out with the Clintons. And Jared Kushner is like more of a snake than he is, right? And, he's right there. Like, if Trump gets reelected, that guy who's already, he got $3 million of the PPP loans he didn't pay back. I mean, he's just, one of these people that's a real, absolute scumbag. And him saying this warped thing, I mean, it's just really messed up. Anyways, this video went on a lot longer than I thought. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.